What is up, guys? Now, UFC on Fight Night in Fortaleza just ended, and what a night of fights. What a great card. Definitely lived up to the hype. The stylistic matchups on paper were very much anticipated, and they delivered. I mean, you barely had any decisions on this card. Most of the fights got finished. A lot of them spectacular knockouts, slick submissions, some surprising details and outcomes inside those fights. And talking about submissions, and talking about the details and surprising factors, Marlon Moraes beat Raphael Assuncao by submission 3 minutes and 17 seconds into the fight. Marlon Moraes came in there just like he did in his last two fights. This was a very different Moraes than the first fight with Assuncao. He didn't force his openings, he didn't lunge into punches, he let the openings present themselves for the most part, looked for angles a little bit more, and eventually found that right hand as he cut off on the corner, threw the right hand over the top and caught Assuncao clean. The speed of those overhands were crazy, and the power were just absolutely out of this world. To catch Assuncao with naked punches without really a good setup behind another strike, it's so hard to do in itself because of how defensively sound and responsible Assuncao actually is, and he caught him with two of them. Right? Caught him with two of them, got into the ground, and got into Assuncao's guard, and how easily he was able to pass the guard and eventually snatch onto a very quick guillotine. That is another thing that's super impressive. To submit Assuncao in the first round like that, give this man a title shot. Give Moraes a title shot. He deserves it. It's his. It's rightfully his. He just finished 3 top contenders back to back to back in the first round each in spectacular fashion. Who else has done that? Who else in any other division, I can't think off the top of my head, has done what Moraes just did in his last 3 fights? He deserves to fight with TJ Dillashaw. Now, the whole thing with Henry Cejudo creates a little bit of confusion, but I think Marlon Moraes actually gives TJ Dillashaw a lot of problems. I said this before as well. I think if Moraes can get some wins and face TJ, it could be a very compelling and special fight. And I even think he gives Henry Cejudo a run for his money. And who these guys should be fighting next? I think Raphael Assuncao should fight Jimmy Rivera. That makes a lot of sense, I believe. One more fight for either of them or 2 more wins should get them into the title shot picture. And for Marlon Moraes, it should be the title shot. If it's not the title shot, nothing else really makes sense. I guess if Cody Garbrandt beats Pedro Munoz, you can do Marlon Moraes versus Cody. But Moraes deserves a title shot right now. He deserves it. I think they should do that rather than having Henry come up to 135 right now. Because let's say Moraes does beat TJ, you got another compelling fight between Moraes and Cejudo, right? And if TJ is going to be able to beat Moraes, I guess the fight with Henry Cejudo can be a little bit bigger than it would initially be for the rematch. And then we go to the co-main event. Jose Aldo TKOs Renato Moicano 44 seconds into the second round. What do you say about Jose Aldo, man? He has shown everybody again, just like the Jeremy Stephens fight, he is not out of it. He's not old. His skills have not declined. His chin has not gone away. He is as sharp as he's always been. It's just Max Holloway is that good. Max made it seem like Jose Aldo was never the same. That's just how good Holloway is. Because Jose Aldo is beating these top contenders. He body shot Jeremy Stephens in the first round, and he just TKO'd Renato Moicano early in the second round. If you look back at Jose Aldo's career when he was the champion, he wasn't finishing anybody, really. Finished Chad Mendes, finished Korean Zombie. The Korean Zombie one was a little bit weird due to injury more than anything. But now he's finishing the guys he's facing. It just shows how good his competition was when he was a champion, and it also just furthers his claim as the greatest featherweight of all time. I mean, he's still beating amazing fighters, and the way he's beating them is absolutely amazing to watch. He was throwing leg kicks at Moicano early, and you saw Moicano start to take a little bit further of a distance to get away from the leg kicks because he doesn't really check them. And he started using his jab after that, and you saw all those pull counters. A couple of them, I think, on the right hand, but pull on the long punches, try to return with his right hand, but it's a bit problematic to land those right hands on Moicano specifically because of how long he is, right? When he throws those long punches, Aldo has to cover the same distance that Moicano initially covered, which is why you saw the punches fall short for Aldo. But that left hook, man, that left hook was the weapon of the fight. He threw a couple to the body, but then when Moicano threw the knee to intercept a shorter Aldo on his way in, Aldo threw a right hand over the top and swung that left hook across the bleachers right through Moicano's chin with all of his power. And Moicano got hurt. And what was noticeable about it is Moicano started backing up and shelling up. And that is something Moicano did not do in the entire fight. So Aldo smelled blood, and he unleashed every ounce of his being to finish Moicano, and it was just too much. A 3-round Jose Aldo is one of the most dangerous fighters pound for pound in the UFC because he can do that to you. He can exert himself completely like that and still be dangerous in the 3rd round without gassing out in the championship rounds. and Aldo started going to the body with those left hooks. I mean, he whips him so hard, man. What he's doing is, when he lands him to the body, Moicano drops his guard for the most part, or he focuses to the body, and he's not anticipating shots to the head, and then Aldo will come with right hands over the top, and he stunned Moicano with almost every single headshot when he was able to do this. And there was a point where he started tripling up on his left hooks to the body and landing devastating punches over the top, landing a couple knees and stuff, and eventually just finished Moicano. It looked like a bit of an early stoppage when you first look at it, but looking at the replay, Moicano did look like he was a little bit out of it. Not completely out of it, but just like very dazed, and he was just getting hit. He wasn't blocking or defending any of those shots. So it's a great win for Jose Aldo, man. And that legendary celebration, man, when he ran into the crowd and just celebrated his win with his people, got into the cage and said on the mic that everybody counted him out on this fight. It was kind of heartwarming, right? But it just shows that you cannot underestimate one of the greatest of all time like that. And we should not underestimate his accomplishments in his career. And who these guys should be fighting next? I think Renato Moicano should fight Mirsad Bektic because they were supposed to fight in December. It didn't happen, so let's rerun it again, book it again. I think it's a good stylistic matchup for both of them. And for Jose Aldo, he's expressed interest to go up to 155. He notably named Anthony Pettis and Dustin Poirier. I don't think the Anthony Pettis fight is going to happen because Aldo wants to fight in May, and Pettis is fighting Wonderboy, right? So I don't think that fight's going to happen. Dustin Poirier, it can happen, maybe. But if he's going to stick around at 145, it either has to be Brian Ortega or Alexander Volkanovski. I like both of those fights. Anybody else doesn't make sense because most of the other top contenders he has already beaten. And Volkanovski did call him out after the fight. I absolutely love that fight. I think it'd be a very close fight. I actually think Volkanovski can give Jose Aldo a lot of problems, more so than anybody else. I actually think Aldo beats Brian Ortega pretty soundly, but Volkanovski I think is a different beast stylistically for Aldo. And if he fights Volkanovski, I think the winner should get a title shot. Even if Jose Aldo wins, I think he deserves a title shot. I mean, beating Renato Moicano, Jeremy Stephens, and Alexander Volkanovski, he has been how many guys in the top 10 and the top 7 that won't be able to get title shots because of Jose Aldo, right? So I think he probably deserves another one if he beats Volkanovski. Right now, I actually think Volkanovski does deserve a title shot because who else in the top 10 deserves it over him? By default, he deserves it because Frankie got injured, Ortega just lost to Holloway, Jose Aldo just lost twice to Holloway. I think he needs another good win. Renato Moicano just lost to Aldo. Jeremy Stephens lost to Aldo. Swanson lost to Renato Moicano. Maybe if Mirsad Bektic can get another big win over a top contender, he could probably get in there, but it should be Volkanovski. But I do like the fight with Aldo very much. And then we go to Demian Maia submitting Lyman Good 2 minutes and 38 seconds into the first round. I mean, what do you say about this fight? Demian Maia did what Demian Maia does. He's the human backpack, and if you allow him to be your human backpack, it's never really a good place to be. It's probably one of the worst places to be for any MMA fight. And the whole question was, could he get Good to the ground? And could he create contact with him against the cage? And what Good did was, right away in the beginning of the fight, he circled himself to put his back on the cage. I don't know why he did that. Maybe he didn't realize it. But he put himself to the cage. Demian Maia really didn't have a part in that, and then Maia threw a left hand, Good tried to counter with his own right hand, Maia shot in against the cage, got Good to the ground, and because he got Good to the ground, Maia was able to capitalize on Good trying to stand up, and he eventually got Good's back. And that's pretty much it. I mean, Lyman Good did a good job of defending the rear naked choke for a pretty long time, but that squeeze, man, it was eventually going to get the tap, man. And it's a good win for Demian Maia. 41 years old is still doing the thing. Who these guys should be fighting next? As for Lyman Good, I mean, he was doing pretty well before this Demian Maia fight. Maybe give him a top 15 fighter, maybe a Alex Oliveira. I think it makes a lot of sense. Jeff Neal would be very fun. Jeff Neal is a young prospect. I think it'd be a very interesting stand-up fight. And for Demian Maia, the loser of Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren makes a lot of sense, especially if Ben Askren loses. I think his fight with Demian Maia would be so compelling. And then we go to Charles Oliveira submitting David Tamer 55 seconds of the second round. The eye was the target of the entire fight. I mean, how many eye pokes, eye strikes happened within that first round? I mean, it was crazy. Charles Oliveira got poked in both eyes with one extension of David Tamer's hand. And then he got poked again. And then Charles Oliveira kicked Tamer in the eye. I mean, it was just madness in there. John Jones would be proud. No, I'm just kidding. The biggest thing to take note is David Tamer really got flustered in that fight. The technical striking he's usually known for was not a part of this fight. Charles Oliveira gave him no respect for his striking, walked him down, threw out right hands, stunned Tamer a couple times, and Tamer just couldn't get away from the cage. And maybe because he got hit in the eye, he just got so fidgety out there. Like he didn't set anything up. He was just swinging that left hand, something he really doesn't do a whole lot. When I was watching it live, I was a little bit surprised. I'm wondering why such an experienced kickboxer in David Tamer would get so flustered out there against Charles Oliveira. But maybe it's just the pressure. Maybe he got kicked in the eye and that was a part of it. Maybe he just panicked in there. And Charles Oliveira was able to land an up elbow, Anderson Silva style, up elbow, and stun Tamer badly to the point where Tamer turned his back to Oliveira and Oliveira was just swinging on him to finish it. Until David Tamer exposed his neck. Oliveira got the Anaconda choke eventually and just tapped out Tamer and just furthered his most submission wins in UFC history record. He is the submission master of the UFC. So it's a great win for Charles Oliveira. For these two fighters, neither are ranked, but I do think Charles Oliveira should get a top 15 fighter next. I think David Tamer should get the winner of Mark J. Casey versus Joe Duffy. That would be an amazing fight. Either way, Joe Duffy versus Tamer, Jake Casey versus Tamer. Those will be some explosive, fun matchups. And for Charles Oliveira, I think him versus Dan Hooker would make a lot of sense, or Francisco Trinaldo. Either of those fights would be really good. And then we go to Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker knocking out Justin Ledet 15 seconds into the fight. I mean, this guy came out there dancing. It almost looked like he was trying to seduce the cut man or something. And actually, did you guys ever see one of his walkouts where it was like this whole stripper theme? This guy's wild, man. I mean, this guy's just a happy-go-lucky guy, like, for real. He looks like a character in a movie, like a character from Wizard of Oz or something, where he's just always dancing, being weird, and it's fun, man. It's really fun. And when the fight started, he completely calmed himself. His entire expression, his entire demeanor changed. He took that wide stance. I think he L-stepped away from Justin Ledet's attack, then threw a side kick to the thigh of Ledet to keep some distance, and then he measured for the hook kick. So he threw a right hook kick, and Ledet was able to block it a little bit, where Ledet tried to counter him with the right hand. Usually that kind of angle is very good to counter someone. It's able to knock out someone pretty easily at that kind of angle, but little did he know, Walker has been in this position many times in his career, where he would throw these wild kicks, he would miss, and he would swing that back fist right in the chin of his opponent. He's dropped many people like this. I said this in my prediction video, and he caught Justin Ledet with the same thing. Ledet didn't see it coming, got dropped, and Walker started landing some Thor-type hammers on top of Ledet. I mean, did you see how high he was winding back his punches? And then he was swinging it down with his ridiculous arm reach? I mean, it looked like his elbow was touching the sky, and then he just crashed it down onto Ledet's head. And then he went all crazy again with his dancing. Did the worm out there. He could have handspring over the cage. I mean, this guy is super athletic, man. Super athletic. Big guy, fast, powerful, young, creative, all the stuff you want in a prospect. And hopefully, he will be one of the guys that are able to challenge Jon Jones in the future. He looks promising right now, but there is a ways to go. And I just gotta say, his post-fight interview was hilarious. It made me an instant fan. He's all like, I want to fight again. Who wants to fight me right now? He's calling people to fight him right there and then. The guy is awesome, man. So who these guys should be fighting next? Well, for Justin Ledet, it should be really anybody in the light heavyweight division, or if he wants to go back up to heavyweight because he has 2 losses now in the light heavyweight division. And for Johnny Walker, I do like Nikita Krylov. I really like a fight with Nikita Krylov because they're very similar. They're both very athletic. They both have a very similar kicking game, all that sort of stuff. It would make such a fun fight. But if you do that, Johnny Walker is going to have a fast track to the title shot because there's not much to go through to get a title shot in this division. So stylistically, as a fun matchup, I would like to see Nikita Krylov. And if Johnny Walker's hype is real and he beats Nikita Krylov, then maybe it would be a good decision. But if it's not going to be him, Sam Alvey makes sense. Devin Clark makes sense. You know, anybody outside the top 15. But if it was up to me, I'd probably do the Nikita Krylov fight. And then we go to Livia Renata Souza beating Sarah Frota by decision. By split decision, I think, right? 29-28 on all scorecards. 2 going for Souza, 1 going for Frota. I mean, what do you say about this fight? It was a common pattern throughout the fight. Frota was the much, much bigger fighter. I mean, it was so obvious. She was practically a flyweight for the weigh-ins, and she probably rehydrated to something massively bigger than Souza. And Souza, as she is, she's a small 115er, right? She's a small strawweight. But she was able to overcome the size advantage with her grappling. I mean, she had amazing trips, showcased good judo. She landed a couple overhands over the top, but you can see when Frota ever connected on Souza, it was like rattling her everywhere. The size advantage was a clear factor in this fight. But Souza has some close submissions in there, but it was just really her going for those takedowns from a distance, being elusive in front of Frota. There were a couple times I think she did what TJ Dillashaw did to John Lineker, where she was shooting for the single and used the outside trip to get the opponent to the ground. Just very crafty grappling from Souza. So who these fighters should be fighting next? For Frota, anybody. It was her debut in the UFC. And for Souza, Poliana Botello makes sense. Anybody outside the top 15 because the strawweight division is pretty stacked. Courtney Casey makes sense. If I had to choose, I do like the Courtney Casey fight. It would be another big fighter for her, but that would be interesting. Alexander Aldo is also interesting. It would be a striker versus grappler matchup. And I actually did miss the rest of the card. I have to catch up on all that. I did see most of the Marcus Perez versus Anthony Hernandez fight. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to make a breakdown of the fights in the card, so be lookout for that. And I'm working on my nightmare matchups and a bunch of other stuff. So be lookout for all that. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next video.